When you hear somebody state the phrase, "We live in a simulation," what pops into your head? You might think of Elon Musk's thoughts on the subject, countless videos and Reddit posts debating the philosophy of it, comparisons to the Matrix, Nick Bostrom's paper, etc. But the central idea that is associated with the concept of our reality being nothing but a computer simulation is this: that if our reality is indeed simulated, what's the point of anything? What if I told you that my simulation thesis not only gets rid of such nihilistic situations, but also is one of the most meaningful ways to look at life and purpose? Now, before I go full L. Ron Hubbard on you, a disclaimer. This video is just a speculative theory that relies more on theology and philosophy rather than science, and plenty of narcissism throughout. With this theory, our most unanswered questions about existence, religion, and God can be answered. Questions like, why are we here? What is our purpose? Is there a God? If so, why did he create us? Did he write the Old Testament? If so, how can we reconcile science with the text? And, most pressing of all, why do bad things happen to good people? A hypothetical situation must be told in order to properly explain this theory. It is the far future. Humanity did not learn from its mistakes, and has destroyed most of its own population and habitat. If you played the game Soma, you may know where I am going with this. A small group of scientists who survived the devastation launched a space vessel into Earth's orbit. This is what is contained on the vessel. 2 of the world's smartest scientists, a supercomputer with unlimited energy coming from the sun, and a 3D bioprinter. Before the launch, the 2 scientists engage in a conversation regarding the fate of humanity and on why this vessel was conceived. It goes like this. I apologize for the cringe.
Humanity is destroyed. How should we repopulate the Earth?
What's the point of repopulation if humanity is going to destroy itself again? It's inherent in our nature.
We can just tune their behavior to be good.
How can we do that without taking away free will?
We can do it like this. First, we make a computer simulation that reflects our world. After humanity has gotten to a certain evolutionary point, we can select a human's consciousness from that simulation and transfer it in the real world in an organic 3D printed shell.
Good idea. Now who chooses who is good?
We build a super artificial intelligence that will do it for us.
Sounds good.
And so, as Earth slowly recuperates itself, the simulation begins to run. It is at this point where I will be bringing up biblical references, so be warned if that turns you off. The Old Testament is the superintelligence's guide on how to be selected for repopulation of the real world. This part of the theory is a bit out there, but bear with me. The reason the Old Testament does not outright state that everything is a simulation is obvious. People won't get it. But once we view the Genesis narrative through this lens, things start to make sense. For example, it now makes sense that the world was created in 6 days, while science shows it was made in a much longer period of time. The 6 days of creation translates to the 6 days it took to develop the simulation. There is certain language and phrases used in Genesis that has baffled scholars for ages, but now they make sense in this context. After God, aka the superintelligence, creates a certain thing, it mentions it in past tense. An example being, and there was evening. The reason it uses this tense is to show that evening already existed in the real world. There is more. When God creates man, he says, let us make them in our image. First off, the reason God creates man in his own image is because the human scientists created God in their own image. In the quote, God states, our image. Who is our referring to? Traditional interpretation states that God is referring to his divine counsel. But in our case, he is talking to the humans on board the vessel. He is telling the scientists that he is making the inhabitants of the simulation in the human's image, which is the whole point of the simulation. There are many more biblical concepts that can be translated into the simulation argument, but that is a whole video on its own. See if you can find any on your own time. The main idea behind the Old Testament being a guide on how to be selected is that it gives us a set of laws to live by, so that God has a standard to select which consciousness is the most well-behaved. This idea in Judaism is called Olam Haba, meaning the next world. Now that you understand the religious argument for a simulated reality, we can answer the remaining unanswered questions I posed at the beginning. What is our purpose? Simply, to be good, and then be selected for the next world. Why do bad things happen to good people? The ultimate question about existence can finally be answered. God, or the SI, created this simulated world that mirrors reality in order to have a genuine outcome. The reality they based off of is a godless one, so there is no divine justice. But in the simulated reality, there is a God, but he is not benevolent. The story of Sodom gives a classical answer on how God interacts with the world. But if you're confused, here's an analogy. In order to determine which pup is the strongest, the father wolf pits them all in a fight. But he would not intervene to help one of them win, for the outcome would not be genuine. He does not intervene, so that he would know which pup would triumph, and who truly is the strongest. Before we conclude, here's a summary of the theory. Number 1. Earth is rendered inhabitable due to the humans' evil inclination. Number 2. Humans created a vessel with the ability to 3D print humans, organic or synthetic, and insert consciousness into these bodies. This vessel is sent in orbit. Number 3. A computer simulation is created on the vessel that mirrors the real world. This is created to find consciousnesses that behave good without taking away free will. Number 4. In order for humans to have a standard to live by, the superintelligence running the simulation creates and implements the Old Testament. Number 5. People who follow these laws are marked down as worthy of having their consciousness stored until Earth recuperates itself from the damage. What is the point of all this? The point is that there could be a situation where science and religion can coexist. This hypothetical gives people who are skeptical of religion and a grander meaning a path that follows a logical route, rather than a faith-based one. Thanks for watching.